Hello, so in this video we're going to create a Next project with the app router. We're also going to integrate with integrate Prisma into the system and then have that set up with Planetscale on a MySQL database, store some very simple user models, then we'll set that up with Next.Auth so that we can have authentication sessions, and then I'll show you how to use the app router and get that set up with Next.Auth so that we'll be able to have nice sessions and secure protected routes on the new app directory in Next.js. So if we just first of all get started with this project, so we'll go ahead and just under the getting started, remember we are on the app router here, we'll be just copying the command to create a new Next project. So I'll just call this demo app. You can call it whatever you want. We'll be doing this with TypeScript. You don't have to do that. But this is just to show how we'll be doing it on that. Real only important thing to keep in mind is that we need to hit the yes setting for app router. So go ahead and do that. And that's going to just run. And I'll just give it a second. All right. And so we've got the project all set up, the base Next.js project. So I'm just going to go ahead and type npm run dev just to make sure that that runs smoothly. And I'm just going to go ahead and refresh my local hosts on port 3000 just to make sure that works. So it should be compiling at the moment. So it's compiling, and if we refresh, we can see that it works. Okay, great. So make sure that your project is set up all nice. So next thing we're going to do is I'm just going to close the server here. We're going to go to the next.config.js file and go ahead and enable the server actions, the experimental server actions. So we're going to just use this to easily execute things on the back end. It's much easier than registering endpoints. So we'll be using server actions. And I'll show you how to use those. It's a very nice system. So we'll delete these base CSS. I don't know what just happened. We'll delete the base CSS things except for a Tailwind. Inside of the layout, we can go ahead and keep this. This is fine. Keep the children like so. Get that indented. This is a bit excessive, so we'll just go ahead and delete this. We just need a very simple setup here, so let's just say that's a full width, and we'll just say this is a home page. There we go. Okay, and put text 3XL, let's say. So if we go ahead and run that, we should be able to have a much more simple system running. I'm just going to delete favicon as well. We don't need that. We just want everything to be as bare as possible. We'll go ahead and add everything in a sec. Perfect. Great. All right. That is good. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is just set up Prisma. So if we head over to the Getting Started page on prisma.io, we'll be able to very easily see that's a guide for setting it up with Next.js. We'll press that, and yeah, I think that's the wrong page actually. What we really need is the Quick Start guide. Yeah, here we go. So we need to. So we've already done npm init -y. That's the next setup command. So we'll just install TypeScript tsnode and all the types required. Copy that in and just install. While it's doing that, we'll head out. We've already initialized TypeScript. We need to initialize TypeScript if you've not enabled TypeScript on the Next.js project, but we pressed the yes button for that, so we don't need to do this. So we can go ahead and copy the next step here. And we see the first one is done. We can npm install Prisma, saves to dev, and then we can run this init command. We need to modify that a little bit. So it says SQLite. Of course, we're going to run on Planetscale, which runs MySQL. So we'll do MySQL here. Now, the procedure is very, very similar to SQLite. So if you're using SQLite, that's still fine. And then we can start going ahead and model our data. So we'll do that in a second. But first of all, what we're going to be doing here is we can go ahead and go into Prisma. And as we can see, we've got this database URL dependency, which has been also preset already right here for us. So if we just head over to Planetscale, so this is just a raw account. So you just need to create a raw account on Planetscale with nothing in it, and you'll be able to see this. And then we'll press the create button here. And that's going to go ahead and create we'll just call this Next app for the database name. I'll select the London region because that's the one that's closest to me, but just select the one, whichever one is closest, or it doesn't really matter. Scroll all the way down, we create a new database with this button here. I'm just going to quickly pause. It takes a few seconds for this to initialize. So after about 1 minute or so, we should be able to see this. So it says it's still initializing, but I should be able to just refresh and it's generating now. Anyway, what matters is that we can press this Get Connection Strings button. So once we can press that, go ahead and press it. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and wipe this entire database after, so you won't have any luck trying to copy my secrets. So anyway, make sure you select the admin role for now, main branch, name doesn't matter, and we'll press the create password button here. There are a bunch of options here, connect with, etc. In this video, we're going to use Prisma to connect. So it gives you 2 tabs here, and what we'll be doing is just copying all of the code from schema.prisma into schema.prisma here. Very simple. We'll just keep the comments just for fun. Reindent that. And we'll go back. And then the environment variable here contains the necessary database URL, including the username and password and the host name as well. So we'll go ahead and paste that straight in there. So we've got the username section, the password section, and then the rest that we can use to integrate Prisma with our MySQL database, which is all perfect. So now we've got that all set up. We can just quickly define the model that we'll be using here, which is called user. So the user will have an ID, which is a string, and it's going to be using the ID tag in Prisma, and it's going to default to, we'll use CUID, but you can use any UUID, any UUID type you like in the function you like in Prisma. So we'll just store email, which is going to be a string, and it's also going to be a unique string because we don't want users to have, we don't want 2 users to have the same email address. We're going to have password hash, which is a string, and it should, sorry, we don't need to have anything on there. So that's all set. We'll just format the document here. And if we go ahead and just type in the command here, npx prisma db push, and type that in, we're going to be pushing this schema, so this model, into the MySQL database that we've got set up on Planetscale now. And it's also going to be generating the client automatically. So if that runs all well, that means that your Prisma and Planetscale setup has been successful. If it doesn't work, make sure that you double check the database URL here, make sure that it's the right one you've got in here, and then run the command again. So just to check if this works, we can go to the settings page first. We need to allow web console access to production branches. This may or may not be an unsafe practice if you're actually deploying anything in production, so just watch out for that. But we're just going to use this setting for demonstrative purposes. If we go to console, we can put show tables, and we should be able to see the user table here. So that means that it worked. We've pushed the user table from the Prisma model definition, to the MySQL database. So that means that it works. So the next thing we'll be doing now is installing Next-Auth onto our project. So we'll be copying this command, npm install Next-Auth. So npm install Next-Auth here. While we're waiting for that, we want to make a folder under the app router called API and /auth / Next-Auth. And under this, we need to have the route, of course, .ts. So in the pages router, of course, we would have .nextauth.ts, but it's the app router, so that'll be the name of the folder, and then route.ts is actually the endpoint. So inside of here, we also want a few auxiliary libraries installed. So we want installed Lodash, which will help us get the right returns with the right keys. We'll have JSON Web Token, which will help us encode and decode JSON Web Tokens. And then we'll finally have bcrypt.js, which we'll be using to encrypt and compare user passwords so that they're stored securely in the database. What we'll be doing first here is also quickly creating a lib folder. And this is just going to be the way that we interface with Prisma. Okay, so if we run the command npx prisma generate, so if we change anything in the model, in the schema here, we can generate a client with Prisma. And the client basically allows us to connect to the database in a type-safe manner. And so we just need to create an instance that we'll be able to access. And we can simply do that by just creating this Prisma file and then have const prisma equals new Prisma client. And then we just export default Prisma here. Then we can just import this variable anywhere we want, and we can just use it very easily. And so what we'll be doing now is setting up the endpoint for a Next-Auth. Okay, so of course we need to have auth options. This type is auth options from Next-Auth. And we're going to be using the credentials provider. So under providers, we're going to use credentials provider. And that did not successfully get caught by my auto importer, so I'll just type that out. So that's going to be from Next-Auth /providers/credentials. And inside of this, we'll just give it a name. We'll just, semicolon. We'll just give it a name, call it credentials. We'll, and then what we want to do now is basically define which credentials we want. So, and for credentials, that's like which variables do we use to log in. So in this object, what we'll be having in this video is an email and password. You can also do username and password, or whichever like combination of stuff you want. So the label here is email, and by the way, this ghost text is from GitHub Copilot. So just if you did not know that. So let's just have placeholder is viewer email.com or something, just so people know what they're supposed to put in. Label is a password for the password, and the type is also password for this. Very simple. Now we need to write in an authorize function. So this is basically a function that takes incoming credentials and checks, is this a valid user? And if it's a valid user, it should return the user. So the first things first is if we inspect this credentials variable here, we see that it may be undefined. So we need to check basically if the thing is undefined. And that is wrong. So if the credentials are not set, we can do that with this. Or if the email or the password is not set. Actually, I see that that's just a string, so we don't need to do that at all. Then we return null, because then the user is not going to be there. Now we can just unpack this. So we'll have email and password. That's going to be equal to the credentials. And now what we'll be doing is essentially, so when the user presses the sign-in button, we need to check, okay, does this user exist in the database? And also, is this the right password? Okay, so essentially the way we'll be doing this is using the new Prisma instance that we just defined under the lib folder here. So if we go ahead and use the Prisma syntax, it looks like this. So it's await, and we'll import the right thing. And then we can do prisma.user.findUnique. If you can't do prisma.user, that means that you need to have the user defined like so in here. And you also need to run npx prisma generate, okay? And then you should be able to use prisma.user. And we'll be able to select the user specified using the email. So it says find unique, which means we're only expecting a single thing. Since we defined the email here to be unique, we can give it the email and not just the ID. So we can give it both the email and the ID. We'll give it the email here. And so this is going to be either a user object or it's going to be null. So if the user is null, we'll just return null. So now that we know that the user actually exists, we need to check against the password that we've got. So if we just define a variable called user password, which is just going to be user.password, I think hash, yeah, then we can check if it's valid with bcrypt. So bcrypt was this library we just imported, so bcrypt.js. And on TypeScript, we need to run this little installation script just to get the types for that. And once it's done, we should be able to use compare sync, just so we don't have to wait anything. We'll have password and a user password. That's going to be that. Now we're going to be encrypting this password hash using bcrypt as well later on, and that's how we can use it to compare. And if it's not valid, we'll return null. If it's valid, though, we'll return the user, of course. Good, and that's everything we need to have here for the providers. Now the next thing we'll do is, it's kind of boring to just have the default Next-Auth sign in and sign out pages, so we'll just make our own custom sign in and sign out pages, because that's more fun. We can do custom styling, etc. So let's just say that, and we'll make these in a moment. But we'll just have these under /auth/sign in and /auth/sign out, like so. Now we need to define the secret key that we'll be using to encode the JWTs that'll be used to store the session. So if we go back to the environment variables, this is where you just want to use something to get a proper secret generated. You can probably find something like this online. I'm just going to use secret, but don't do this in production, of course. We'll go back here. Secret JWT. So these are the auxiliary functions for JSON Web Tokens. And so what we'll be defining in here will be two functions. One function to encode the JWT and another function to decode it. And we'll be using the JSON Web Token library for that. And we'll also install the types for this library. Here we go. And so if we go ahead and just define encode, it takes two parameters, which is a secret, which corresponds to the secret key here, and then the incoming, and then the token, which has not been decoded yet. So if we just mouse over this function, you can see we can decide how we'll encode this. So if the token does not exist, we'll I don't think we can return null on this actually. We can return undefined. So if the token does not exist, if it's like an invalid token, for example, because it's either a JWT or it's undefined, if it's undefined, we'll return undefined as well. Otherwise, we'll return JWT.sign. We'll use we'll sign with the token as the payload, and then the second argument is the key that we'll want to sign it with. That's going to be the secret. Okay. And we've got another issue here. Okay, so it seems like we must return a string. So let's go ahead and throw an error here if we don't have any token at all. Then that's not going to be an issue. So now we have the encode, now we need to decode. So we got a function called decode. It takes the same arguments as well. However, the incoming token is the encrypted one, as in the one that we've signed like so. Of course, we'll run the same. We'll run the same check if it's is there at all. Then we'll define a variable called decoded token, and that's going to be equal to jwt.verify token comma secret. So that's the way that we can verify, basically decode the token using the secret that we've got stored in the backend. And now we're going to have an object that's either going to be a string or it's going to be a JWT payload. So we need to check if it's a string. Now, if it's a string, we'll try and parse this for JSON. And if this fails, it's going to return an error, and that's also fine, because that means it's invalid. And if not, we'll just return the decoded token. The reason is we just need to keep this type safe, and it can only be a JWT that we return, which is an object. And if we move on, so now we've created the functions for encoding and decoding. If we move on, now we can just quickly define a couple numbers. So our strategy for the session storage is going to be JWT, sorry. And we can define the max age here. So I can see that GitHub Copilot already kind of figured it out. So this means that the JSON Web Token will be stored in the cookies for 30 days. And the second variable we'll use here is update age. And this is how frequently the token will be updated. So this means every single day. So it means if you log in on day 0 and you get the new cookie with the JWT, and then you log in 2 days later, then it's still not expired because the max age hasn't run out. You've still got 28 days. However, the update age has expired, which means it's going to update and refresh, and then it refreshes both of these numbers, and we've got a new 30 days, okay? And you can play around with these numbers however you'd like. Now we've got to set the callbacks. So this is when the user kind of interacts with the page, and etc. So the first thing we'll be defining here is session. Session. And we've got a few types to define here. So I kind of goofed that up. Params, and inside of the params, we've basically got session, which is of a session type. And that's not imported correctly from my auto importer. We want to import this from Next-Auth. Then we've got the token, which is a JWT, all uppercase, which is from Next-Auth/JWT. And then we've got a user, which is a user, not a Prisma user. It's from Next-Auth, okay? And let me just double check if that's all. Yeah, that's all the ones we need. So basically what this function does is, if we go in and just hover over here, this callback is called whenever a session is checked, e.g. invoking the API /API/session endpoint, or if we use session or get session. So whenever we're trying to get the session. And this is supposed to return that session. Okay, so let's just say if the params.session.user, yeah. So if the user has been set on the session, if it's a valid session, then we'll be able to use the token, which has been decoded up here. So we've got a decoded token to set the right variables onto the user. So we see that. So these are some default values we get from Next-Auth. So we've got the name, email, and image. For these purposes, we'll just be setting the email. You can also go ahead and redefine this with the Next-Auth module, but that's a little bit complicated, so we're not going to do that in this video. We'll just be setting the email here for now. So if we do params.session.user.email equals token dot, sorry, that's params.token.email. There we go. And then we just return params.session. Very simple. That's very simple. And so the next thing we'll be doing is having the JWT function defined. This one has a params too, but it's quite a bit larger. So we have the token, which is a JWT. Then we have an optional user. So remember the question mark here means it's optional. So we'll have that's going to be a user or undefined. We'll also have an account, and that's going to be an account from Next-Auth, or null or undefined. Then we're going to have a profile, and these are, by the way, these are variables that may be used by Next.js if you decide to add more different types of providers than just credentials. Okay, these are not really used for credentials provider. These are used if you use something like different providers, like adding a Google provider or a GitHub provider so that people can sign in with Google or GitHub. We don't do that here, but we just need to preserve the TypeScript, the type safety of the function. So that's why we're adding this here. So profile is also an optional thing here. It's also from the Next-Auth library, and it's profile undefined. And is new user is a Boolean or undefined. Now you can go ahead and play with this however you want. We're just going to have a very simple approach to this. So if we hover over JWT, it says this callback is called whenever a JSON Web Token is created or updated. Its content is forwarded to the session callback, where you can control what should be returned by the client. So this is when we're basically creating the token, and we want to have the right content inside of the token. Okay, so we're just storing the email in the token. So we're going to check if the user in the params exists, and if so, we're going to set the token's email field to be equal to the user's email field, like so, and then we're just going to return the token. Okay, and then that's passed on to the session whenever we want the session. So you can see we set the email inside of the token, and then that's going to be encoded. Then once it's decoded and we try and get the session, we're going to get the session, set the email for the user using the token, which we set here, and then we're going to get the session. Okay. Maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's okay. We'll see in a moment. The last thing we need to do is export an endpoint handler. Of course, this changed a little bit in in the app router. So the way we'll do that is, we import Next-Auth from Next-Auth/Next, like so. We'll be giving that auth options, and then we need to export that handler as get and also as post. Okay, so then it can send both get requests and post requests to here. So now we've set up Next-Auth. The next thing we need to do is set up the provider for Next-Auth so that we can get the sessions inside of our app. So if we go ahead and just create a folder called, I want to call it components. We'll just keep this simple. We'll have provider.tsx. You can use this very simple RAFCE to just quickly create a base for the component here. And what this is going to take as inputs or props is going to be children. And that's going to be React Node or several. That's okay. And we'll just define that like so. Children. And what we're going to be doing in here is using the session provider from Next-Auth to provide the session so that we can access it everywhere in the app. Now, we need to wrap everything from the app in this. We also need to declare this as a client-side component. Very important, because this still runs on the client side, but we'll be able to get the server session as well in pages. But if we go to the root layout here, we need to add this, the very first thing before the children. And I'm just going to fix the spacing of this. This is weird. There we go. So we'll use provider like so. And then inside of that, we got the children. Okay. Now we have access to the session everywhere in the app. And that's going to be working all good. So that's the setup for Next-Auth with the app directory. So the next thing we're going to go ahead and create are the pages we defined in the Next-Auth route, the auth options. So we defined a sign in and a sign out page. Now we also need a sign up page. So let's go ahead and create that one first. So if we go ahead and create sign up, and then have page.tsx, we have the sign up page here. Now we need to also create a client-side component for the sign up form. Use client. And so what we'll be doing is inside of the sign up page, I have a very simple little layout here. We'll have an H1 that just says sign up. And that's going to be pretty large, 3XL, let's say. And that's the page. And then after that, we're going to have the sign up form, right? And inside of this sign up form, we're going to handle all of the sign up logic on the client side. So we'll want the email like so. We'll want the password like so. So just using the use state from React. So I prefer to just import it like so. Let's also have a message so we can give some feedback to the user. Sounds pretty good. And we need to have a handle. Let's call it handle submit. And for now, let's just console.log handle submit. Okay. So inside of the sign up form here, what we need to do is just create a basic. I'm just creating a basic layout here. So flex call F4 BG. Let's say it's like a little gray and some padding as well. Okay. So this has 3 things inside of it. And two inputs, one for the email, one for the password, and then one for the button, okay? And actually we have one as well for the message. We need the message as well. So that's gonna look like that. When we click the button, it should call the handle submit function like that. The input fields are very simple. One of them is a text type. The other one is a password type, because then we get nice little dots. It's not just when you type in the password, everyone can see it. Then we have the value of this one is going to be set to email on change. It's going to be set email to the value that we set. Copy this. Put the password in here. The password like so. Okay, and so if we just go ahead and launch this real quick, we should be able to quite easily go ahead and see. So if that compiles, so we'll still be just seeing the home page here, but we should be able to do a /auth/sign-in. Sign up, I mean. And actually we need to put that under the auth, of course, so we'll just move those files like that. And if we do /auth/sign-up, like so, we'll be able to, we just need to fix this little import error here. Save that. There we go. So that's pretty, doesn't look the best, but those are the 2 input fields. And if I press the sign up button here, we can see that it says handle submit. Handle submit. There we go. Perfect. Great. So how do we handle the submit? So we're going to use server actions for this. And server actions allows us to very easily run functions on the backend without having to register any new API endpoints. So we'll create a server, actually just actions folder. Let's just call this one users, just to keep it clean. We'll make this a sign up function. And inside of this will be, first we need to put use server, because it has to be used on the server only. This can only be run on the server. And then what we'll be doing is export a sign up function, which is an async function that takes an email, right, and a password. And then that's going to sign up the user. So this is going to be separated into 2 different steps. Basically, we need to check if the user already exists. And if the user exists, we say that this failed to happen, right? Because the user can't already exist with that email. So we'll try and get the user from Prisma, like so. Find unique. And we'll try and find a user, and that's .user, where the email exists. It's not users. There we go. Then if the user exists, we'll return a user with that email already exists, right? We don't want users with more emails, so they're going to get rejected there. Anyway, now we'll be doing some encryption on the password. And we'll be using bcrypt for this. And inside of here, we'll do bcrypt.hashsync. And we'll just be using a salt length of 10. There's a default length. You can encrypt this however you want, but we'll just be using this setting here. And now once we've encrypted the password, all we'll need to do now is create a new user like so. And we'll be inputting the data with the data field and setting email and password hash like so. Just so you know, this is the same as doing this. It's the same. If the variables are called the same, you can use the key and the value and put it just once. And if this works, then we'll say successfully created new user. Like that. Great, now we've got the sign up action created. We'll head back to this sign up form we created. Let me just get these files closed, it's too much. We will set message to creating signing, let's say signing up. Then we'll set, let's see here. Yeah, we'll set the message to, let's just make it clean. We'll have await sign up. So this is how we're going to call the server action. It's very simple, isn't it? So we'll just add our string. Notice we're on the client side here, and the action is on the server side. Yet we are just calling it as if it's just a function. So Next.js actually goes in and calls this through a real endpoint, but all we see in the code is the function, and it's all type safe. So that's why it's so nice with these server actions here. So we got the new message, and we're going to just set the message to that message. Very easy. So if we go ahead and put something in here, so test, and I'm just going to put test as my password. Please don't steal my account. We'll put signing up, successfully created new user. And if I press this button again, it says user already exists. So let's just inspect our data. So if we create a new terminal, we can use npx Prisma Studio to access our data. And yeah, it seems like that wants to install, oh, we are in the wrong. So remember to run this from your actual app. That's going to open up a new window, and we'll be able to see that the user is created right here. And this password obviously makes no sense, so that's all encrypted there. And if we go ahead and create a new user with another email, let's just say test.test.com, successfully created. Go ahead and refresh here, and it's got a new user in here. And that's all stored on Planetscale, so that's very nice. So now the users can sign up. Let's make a page that lets them sign in. So if we just go ahead and create a new folder under sign up, we want to create it on the auth. So that's sign in, page.csx, sign in page. This is going to be a very simple, again, very, very simple, similar to sign up. But we're just going to have sign in. We'll call that sign in form, you guessed it. And let's just copy the component we already created, sign up form, and we'll just call that sign in form. Change the name like that. Put signing in, sign in. Right, so, and import that like so. Now we've got the sign in page, very, very simple, okay? We just copied the sign up form, it changed the name, okay? And it's exactly the same thing. So sign in, if I go here, it just says sign in now, okay? But if I press the button, it's actually going to try and sign me up. So what we need to do here instead is we need to go ahead and get the session, okay? So if we get the session, inside of here, we need to get the status. Get this use session. You can use the Next-Auth /React import, and that's actually going to be either authenticated, loading, or unauthenticated. And the first thing we need to do is create a use effect. And when that status changes, we want to check if the status is equal to authenticated. And if so, and we also need to get a router hook used here. What you want is use the next/navigation import. It's very important. It's not going to work if you use next/router on the app directory. And if it's like so, we'd need to use router.refresh and router.push. Now this is just going to detect basically, has the user been logged in already? And if so, we refresh it so that we get the new session in the server side, and then we also push the user to a /, so just the home page, in case we don't catch it up here. And so what we want to do now, instead of this system here, we'll have a try and catch block. And inside of the catch, what we'll just do here is just console.log. We'll just log that error. And we'll use the sign in function from Next-Auth. Okay, so sign in response equals await sign in. This function comes from Next-Auth/React, and this takes two parameters. So we need to select which provider we'll be using. So that's going to be credentials, because we're going to be logging in using credentials here. And then in the second argument, we need to provide some more data. So we'll provide the email, the password, and then we'll also set redirect to false so that it doesn't redirect the user. And we'll set the callback URL to slash. So if they sign in, they'll be redirected to this if we've enabled redirect. Actually, we can just go ahead and remove that. Now what we'll want to do is basically check, okay, is this response successful, or is it not successful? Okay, so if the sign-in response is either undefined or if it's not okay, so we've got an OK variable here. It's a Boolean. So if it's not true, we'll set a message that said invalid credentials. Okay. And otherwise, we'll use router.refresh. And this is just going to trigger a refresh, and then we'll be able to push them to the other page like so. And that's going to be everything we need for that, I believe. Yep, so if we go ahead and try and sign in, I've got my account test at test.test. My password is test, so if I sign in here, press the button, I'm redirected to the home page. And if we go ahead and check out the application and cookies, we'll be able to see that we've got a Next-Auth session cookie here, and that's the cookie all encrypted like so. So that should mean that we're signed in properly. Now, if we just go ahead and quickly create a, let's call it sign out, I suppose. Sign out page. Now, hold on a sec. So what needs to be inside of the sign out page is going to be a little weird. So we need to create a component called sign out. So signing out only works on the client side in Next-Auth. So what we'll be doing to sign out is essentially create a component called sign out. And then that's just going to be null. It's going to be completely invisible, but it's going to use effect. And once it's mounted, it's going to call the sign out function instantly. So anywhere, any place we use this, it's going to instantly sign out the user. So we've got sign out like so. And now if we go into the /auth/sign out like so, we should see that it's going to sign us out here. And we may need to have use client at the top if we didn't already do that. Here we go. Now it's going to reload us again. It's going to sign us out. So it's doing that on repeat, and that's because we did not set the proper settings in the sign out. So we need to set callback URL to something that's different from the sign out page, and then we set redirect to true for this. Okay. So if we go ahead and save that, it's going to redirect us to the home page. And now, as we can see in the cookies here on the right side, we can see now that the Next-Auth session cookie has been deleted. And we're not logged in anymore. Now let's just create a little more feedback for the user. Let's do that. Create a little navbar, shall we? So if we have a component called navbar, we'll just create this on the server side. So we'll have const session equals get server session, and we'll put in auth options here. So this is a function we should be able to import from Next-Auth /next. And that's with a dash. I don't know why my thing didn't detect that, but that's how it's supposed to be done. So this is how we get the session, and that's with await. And we need to make this an async component. And then we can get the session in the navbar like so. And essentially this allows us to just check, is the user authenticated or is the user not authenticated? So how we can use this in the navbar now is if we make the navbar, and I'm just thinking of a simple like top navbar, right? So let's say padding X is 4, padding Y is 8, let's say. Background it is a little gray, like so. Then we should be able to use that in the root layout here. Like so. And if we go into the page, that's a slightly gray as we can see. I want to make it a little more gray. So it's more visible. Little more, come on. 300, that's better. Okay, and so inside of here, what we'll be doing is just very simple. So what I want to do first is flex row gap 4, let's say. And what we'll do inside of here is just have a bunch of links from Next. We'll have a link like so. This is going to take us to the home page. Make some more of these. We want one for, let's make a protected. /protected. Let's call it dashboard. That's fun. So inside of here, we'll make a protected. So we'll make a folder called protected. And inside of this, we want dashboard. So let's just have those here for now. So that'll be under protected /dashboard. Then we should have So what we actually want now is sign in, sign out, and sign up, right? So this is going to be conditional. So if the session and session.user.email, so if that's set, then we know that the user is logged in. Then we should be able to just have the, we'll just make that into a ternary like so. Then we have links inside. We'll remove one. So if the user is logged in, they should have only the sign out button. That's going to refer them to /auth /sign out. And if they're not logged in, they should have sign in and sign up, which is /auth /sign in and /auth /sign up, right? So let's see if that works. So I don't think I'm logged in right now, so I'm going to go ahead and press the sign in button, try and log in, and sign in like so. Now that I'm logged in, it looks like I'm successfully signed in, so I can press the sign out button like so. Now I'm signed out, very smooth. Let's also just quickly display a little thing that says that we're signed in with this email account. Could be nice. We need to align the items like so that they're all aligned. If I log in like this, then we can see we're signed in as test.test.test. Perfect. Let's make this bold as well, just to see that that's not a button. Copy that in there. Excellent. Now we've got the navbar. Awesome. So let's create this dashboard. Okay. So if we go into the dashboard and say page.tsx, let's make it a simple dashboard. This is the dashboard. Yeah. So if we go ahead and click dashboard, well, let's sign out first, right? So if we click on dashboard, it says this is the dashboard. So we obviously don't want users who are not signed in to be able to access this, right? So let's go ahead and create a layout under /protected folder, okay? Not under the dashboard, but under /protected. And that's going to be protected layout. This is an async, okay? And so how do we check if the user exists? Well, we already did it, right? Under navbar, if the session is set and the email is set. So we'll just go ahead and do the exact same thing here. So if we go to the navbar, we can see that the session is fetched using getServerSession. So we'll just copy that. And we'll import that from Next-Auth /next. Auth options is the one that we defined. And what we'll do here is say if the session is undefined, or if the session.user.email is undefined, we'll return. Let's say that this is protected and you do not have access to it. Of course, we also have children inside of layouts. So we just need to define that in TypeScript. Like so. Put that in there. And what we'll just do is return the children and nothing else. We don't want this to be special in any way. We just want to return the children. Is there an issue with this? Type is referenced directly or indirectly in the fulfillment callback. Okay, well, let's just do this then. Easy fix. Okay, there we go. So now what we can see is we're not signed in, and if I try and access the dashboard here, it says this is protected and you do not have access to it, right? But if I go ahead and sign in now, we can see that we can sign in like so. Now if we press the dashboard page, we can see that this is the dashboard, right? If we sign out again, we see that this is protected, you don't have access to it. So I think that concludes the video. Everything will be public on GitHub, of course. You'll be able to see all of this code and have a look through it yourself. If you have any questions, please leave a comment down below. If you have anything you'd like to point out, of course, and help other people, please leave that in the comments as well. That's going to be very useful, hopefully, for a lot of people. So hope you enjoyed the video, and hope this finds some use in your Next.js app development with the new app router. I think this is a very cool system, so I hope you find it useful. So yeah, thank you for watching.